Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Employer Roundtable, which has been co-sponsored and organized with Career Services here at the University of Texas in Austin, and it will be hosted by Jonathan Wagner. As we get started, the one thing that was most important is to wish congratulations to all of the 2020 landscape architecture graduates here in the state of Texas. And those of you who are here in Austin or in Texas or in places far and wide, we welcome you. I'd like to thank the panelists very much for their time. And I will turn the meeting over to Jonathan and we will be able to take questions from YouTube or from the meeting after the panelists have completed their presentations. So thank you and welcome.
All right. Thank you, Hope. On behalf of Texas Chapter ASLA and all the participants on this panel, I want to thank UT Austin School of Architecture and UT Austin Landscape Architecture Program for facilitating this important discussion for both recent and upcoming graduates in Texas. The panel we assembled today is a selection of professionals from diverse landscape architecture firms ranging in size and discipline focus, spreading across the state and both nationally. Also with us are two representatives from booming cities in Texas who can share a different side of the industry. And it's really our goal that this broad collective of perspectives can provide practical feedback that can directly benefit students, emerging professionals, and help navigate this incredibly challenging time. There's no doubt that this is an incredibly difficult moment for graduates to enter the job market, given the breadth of the downturn across so many sectors, especially as there's no definitive end in sight and very few predictive factors to forecast kind of where Texas will be in a month, let alone in 2021. We could likely host this panel in the fall or even a month from now and get entirely new feedback. So while it is unclear, that this time to enter the market, I do think that this moment is ripe for the landscape architecture community in Texas and beyond to galvanize. At this time, parks and open spaces public open spaces are being widely discussed as critical infrastructure that directly aid in the physical and mental health of the general public. I honestly feel that this can be a watershed moment for our profession if our collective voices can speak to the imperative nature of our work in local communities and pick up the mantle. This is a moment that can provide great opportunity. To any students watching along, while the lack of clarity in the market is no doubt something to be anxious about, just as many professionals are also feeling. Please do not be discouraged. Staying flexible and positive is really the key. I have no doubt that our professional community will continue to build on this recent momentum, and your unique abilities, your value and your voice can aid and challenge firms to adapt and to think about new solutions and communicating in innovative ways. I'm highly confident that your skills you have learned over your burgeoning careers can and will be directly applicable to the current job market. So I greatly look forward to this discussion and amongst my peers gathered here today to expand on these topics. So thank you again to all my fellow panelists and for UT for joining along. So at this point, we'll just do some real brief introductions of the panel. And what we asked for them to provide is just a quick temperature check on the industry in your region, or if in your firm specifically, if that's applicable. And then going on beyond that, we have a list of prepared questions that each, due to the limited time constraint we have, that each panelist has selected 2 questions that they'll respond to, and we'll show those questions in a moment. So at this time, we'll start the introductions. I can start with myself. I am, again, Jonathan Wagner. I'm Associate Principal of Studio 1619 in Round Rock, Texas, which is just north of Austin, for anyone not familiar. I am the Texas Chapter President, and we have all 5 of our sections. We have 5 sections in Texas. There's DFW, Houston, Gulf Coast, Central Texas, South, and West, and each of our section chairs are on this call today to provide their feedback. So Megan, if you could take away with the Megan Abernathy and West, if you could take it away on the intros, please.
All right, my name is Megan Abernathy. I'm a senior landscape architect with Dunaway and Associates. I'm sort of a unicorn. Oh no. Oh, you changed the screen, scared me. I actually have worked from home for 7 years. I work for all three of our offices, but home is Vernon, west of Wichita Falls, about an hour. So I'm out in the middle of nowhere. But I work for the Midland office, the Fort Worth office, and the San Antonio office. That's where we have landscape architects in all three offices. As far as, oh, and I'm the secretary treasurer for the West Texas chapter. As far as the climate for West Texas, a lot of our projects are driven by oil and oil money. So because of oil prices hitting a negative a couple weeks ago, everything's pretty much on hold as far as West Texas goes. I mean, we still have some projects under construction, which are continuing, but as far as new projects, everybody's kind of just stopped at this point. But as with all oil situations, it always comes back. So I'm sure the projects will come back eventually. In the Fort Worth office, we have such a diversified clientele that's actually a good thing. Multifamily and warehouses and those kinds of things are still booming. The rest is pretty much, we don't really have much on hold in Fort Worth, but it's just slowed down because of the tax, especially some of the public stuff because of the lack of tax money. That's about it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Basic. Thank you so much for having me on the panel. I am a co-owner, co-founder of a firm in Dallas called Delineator. And we're a very small firm, but I'm also the chair of DFW ASLA. I am also happy to say we haven't seen much of a slowdown with our developers locally in the DFW region. Our projects have continued to be constructed, as well as I've written a couple of new proposals in the last few weeks. So we're very excited to see that. Had developers report projects that had been underway or had already received funding for, still going through. A lot of city projects that have bond money are happening. We have a project in Midland. Sorry, I think someone is on very loud. There you go. Sorry. Thank you. We did have one project in Midland, a similar situation that was probably oil related and has been on hold, but very happy to report what I'm seeing is some light layoffs from some of the larger firms, but most people I've been talking to, architects, developers, are still very busy and have a lot of work still on the forefront in the short term, I know.
Very good. My name is Heath Kendrick. I'm a principal at Land Design here in Dallas. Land Design is a landscape architecture, civil engineering firm. We have 5 offices across the United States, about 225 employees here in Dallas, right around 18 people. Workload for us is steady from the landscape side, civil side as well. But we've had, in the past 6 weeks, we've had 14 projects go on hold. And so most of those relate to multifamily, senior housing, student housing work. Hospitality, as we can all imagine, is taking a big hit. Our Orlando office with the Disney furloughs, 223,000 people being furloughed, including the Imagineering team. Hospitality took a big hit. Our Charlotte and DC offices are doing quite well, but here in Dallas, we remain fairly strong. I think it's not, the last 6 weeks and the upcoming remaining 2 weeks of May that's going to be the indicator. What we're really focusing on is the pipeline for the month of June and July. It's, as we're all burning the candles that we have, are we adding more wax to that, or are we just going to burn these candles till we burn them all down? So, we have very positive responses from our clients so far. Most people in Dallas have gone back to work. I'm at the office today. But as we all know, developers are tied to lenders, and financial institutions and lenders are being very careful. We're all staying flush with cash right now. So Until investors are ready to open up the pocketbooks, developers are going to kind of sit tight a little bit as well. And so that's why the next real 4 to 6 weeks is going to be a good canary in the coal mine for all of us.
Okay. I don't know if y'all can see me. This is Kurt Beilharz. I'm the superintendent of park planning with the city of Richardson, Texas. Richardson is a small suburb that's immediately north of Dallas. I work for, once again, Parks and Recreation Department. Construction in this area with the major capital improvement projects that I'm associated with and aware of have not stopped. Things are moving forward. As Lauren mentioned just a few minutes ago, bond projects, those funds are guaranteed, so those kind of projects are moving forward. Some of the landscape architectural consultants that I'm working with and have been talking to in the last couple of weeks tell me that things look good for them for the next 4 to 6 months, but those are projects that were started back in February or January, earlier than that, before the pandemic hit. So they're not really sure what's going to be happening and as he said, in the next, later in the summer, in the next 4 to 5, 6 months and beyond. I can tell you that here in Richardson, most of the projects that we had on the books that we were hoping to bid or had just bid back in April, we have put those on hold indefinitely and that's for at least 3 or 4 months until the city has a better idea of exactly what the financial impact of this is going to be, because it's really a little too early to tell just yet. But city management is working on trying to get a clearer picture. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Central.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Lowry. I'm the Central Texas Chair here in Austin, Texas. I'm a landscape architect at Lionheart Places. Lionheart Places, if you're not aware, is a firm made up of planners and landscape architects. We work on both public and private projects. We mainly focus on commercial landscape architecture with a few residential projects mixed in. And in regards to the climate or the current climate of the market in Central Texas, we've without a doubt felt it. Austin is one of the most booming economies that I've ever seen. I can't even tell you how many cranes are up in the sky right now. So it was definitely a big shock to me with this state of affairs that's kind of happening, and definitely shocked me to the core being down here in Austin and even still feeling that. But our group specifically has seen projects go on hold. I'm also happy to report that all those projects that went on hold back in March are, I'd say 90 to 95% of them have hit the ground running again. And that's really exciting to see. And it was just also a very strange time for the past 6 to 8 weeks and a lot of uncertainty around all of that. I also am happy to report too that we didn't have to let anyone go. We didn't furlough anyone, which is really exciting. But that has happened here with other firms in the Austin area, which again is just a crazy idea to me, considering where the economy was 8 weeks ago before all of this hit. So just my interpretation, just a crazy time here.
And I got out of order a little bit. Sorry about this, Houston Gulf Coast, Sarah. But Eileen, you can go ahead and continue, then we'll hop to Houston.
Can you guys hear me? Is that working? Great. Good morning, Eileen Dryden. I work for the city of Pflugerville. I'm the park development manager. I am responsible for getting capital improvement projects related to the park system on the ground. The city went into operating on essential personnel only in the middle of March, and we are still operating that way. We will be in that status until June 15th. We're kind of following Travis County and their guidelines on how to deal with the COVID-19 issue. As far as development, all capital improvement projects, including parks, were deemed essential. So we did not see a slowdown in that, which I'm grateful for. There was talk for like a very short amount of time of closing down some of the private commercial construction going on around town. And I think that happened for less than 24 hours, and then everything was back up and running again. Otherwise, we are still moving forward. We have quite a long list of projects, excuse me, in the hopper for the rest of the year. Actually, for the rest, probably for 2 to 3 years. So we're pretty set up that way, but the city is being very cautious about, you know, do we launch any new projects that are unfunded at this time? So we're in a holding pattern for unfunded projects right now. So thank you.
All right, Sarah, we can hop to Houston Gulf Coast.
Sure. Can you hear me? Great. I'm Sarah Delcom. I'm the Houston Gulf Coast Section Chair of Texas ASLA. I've been a landscape architect in Houston for a little over 7 years now. I'm an associate and operations manager for Design Workshop Houston. So while I can speak more specifically about Houston, I generally know the functions and the status of our 8 other offices in the country. Houston, I think, is faring generally pretty well, but maintaining very cautious. Little to no layoffs among our local landscape architecture firms in Houston, but generally I think a lot of firms are less eager to hire since the future is so unknown. We haven't experienced a significant stop or halt in our work, but it's moving just a little bit slower. Design services and construction early on were deemed essential, so nothing really slowed down, and construction is actually moving pretty steadily.
Bill, were you able to hop on? I don't hear him, so we can move on to Tanya in South.
Hi, I'm Tanya Hernandez. I am the chair of the South Texas section. I work for LPA Design Studios, and then our work hasn't stopped. We have firms in California and San Antonio, and we're a multidiscipline firm. So we have everybody from architecture, engineers, structural, interiors, and landscape architects. And in Texas, we primarily do K through 12 educational work, and so that is very essential. We were fortunate enough to not let anybody go as a whole company overall. In California, we do a lot of private work, and that kind of slowed down, but it's ramping up again now that the economy's picking up. But in general, we have been working, and since we work across country, we were able to accommodate quickly to working from home, and we are looking forward to the economy to build up again. So we're grateful that we have work, and everything was steady for us.
Perfect. And Bill, I see his phone, so if you can unmute and chime in from TBG's perspective. Yeah, I see him.
No, he's here. He's here.
Okay,
There he is.
there we go. While he's getting on, I'll just briefly mention, we did, as I mentioned, have a survey out to all the members for ASLA across the state of Texas. And just in this small group, it's just like what we're seeing with the larger survey membership. The responses are so varied across so many different firms and sectors about what each firm is doing, what individuals are feeling. And you can see it just in the responses here, but generally speaking, Texas is in a really good position overall. And most have not had to give layoffs or furlough employees at this point in time. A lot of responses have been given to potential, they're worried about the future if that were to happen, or they're planning for that and trying to be proactive in that regard. So that's a really interesting side of where we are currently. Bill, were you able to hop on?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
About that. So I think perspective on Houston, and obviously PBG, we have offices across the entire state, but I'll give you perspective on Houston. I just heard the share just a moment ago on Houston. I think Houston as a whole, I agree, is somewhat steady. I do think that we do see some sluggish opportunities in areas such as office, but I think that's mostly in relationship to oil and gas. It was slow before all this happened. Education in higher ed arena seem to be steady. Multifamily seems to be steady for us. And I think what's interesting is public sector is strong where there were bonds already existing. But we do see that public sector appears to have some fear of obviously funding going forward. And then I think in a master plan community world in Houston region is surprisingly enough, April was, for some communities, their highest selling month of the year. So that's interesting. So that's brought some opportunities for land planning and new projects. But overall, we haven't had any pay cuts. We haven't had any layoffs. And we also have won a number of projects and have seen an uptick specifically in other parts of the state, but Houston's starting to see that too. So very optimistic on what's out there.
Perfect. Thank you all for those. So we can move on to the next set of questions. I'm trying to change my page here. I'm in full screen. There we go. So we were given from the UT School of Architecture, these were a list of questions that were posed to the panel. And again, due to the limited time frame, we had asked each of the panelists to speak to specific to 2 questions. All of them are very intriguing, and I encourage each of the panelists, if you have answers, prepared responses prepared for each of the other ones, please send those to me and Hope in a text format if we're not able to cover those today. And I'd love to expand on this in another format. So at this time, I mean, you can see the panelist questions on the screen, and I'll just leave it up to the same order that we just kind of went in, or a revised order in the way that we had it shown now that we have everybody. And just respond to the questions you have responses to, and then we can just kind of go from there.
Okay.
Megan, you want to start?
Yes, I'm here. I guess I'll start with number 3. What advice do you have for landscape architecture graduates to stand out from the crowd in a moment when many firms are restricting hiring? I would say patience, and also just because we're all in an unknown for the profession for sure. Also show a lot of initiative and use this time. If you don't get hired immediately, don't give up. Just use this time to gain more skills, maybe download the free version of AutoCAD while you still can while you're a student. Just try to practice your skills, because the better you are at CAD and learning like Zoom and doing presentations online, I feel like in the future, that's actually me working from home for 7 years. I'm getting pretty used to it, but I feel like things are changing and they're going to head that direction. Not that offices are going to be, that there aren't going to be offices, but that it's going to be a combination of working from home and offices. So I think the most important thing is just be confident, and to do that you have to know what you have to be good at AutoCAD, Photoshop, Zoom, all of those kinds of things. So I say that's probably number 1 for that question. And then the next question, let's see. Are there other industries that may be hiring where landscape architecture graduates could be valuable? Especially this summer, if you don't get hired immediately, go work for a nursery. The nurseries are actually booming right now. So, because what else is there to do but work in the yard if you can't leave your house? So go work in a nursery. Maybe see if there's a smaller design build company that you could work for. There's definitely other options other than landscape architecture firms. Even some, I would say, multidisciplinary firms where maybe they're civil, and we're a multidisciplinary firm. Maybe civil engineers have a lot of projects, so maybe you're a CAD tech for a while. Maybe you're working for like doing presentations for a firm, maybe more like in a marketing sector. Just don't give up. Just try to diversify as best as you can right now, and try to stay in landscape architecture as close as you can. In my class, I graduated in 2002. There were 5 girls. I'm the only one still left. So don't give up, because that was right after 9/11. Things were kind of scary then, and then 2008 hit, and that was even worse. So just don't give up. That's what I would say.
Perfect. Thank you. Lauren, DFW.
Hi, I would like to start by tackling question number 5. When I tell people my story, I always say that I was very lucky to graduate right after the recession. And at first people say, what? And then I think that I try to talk them through, the way that I look at things is really how can we make things like this time a big opportunity? And I think just to piggyback on what Megan said, if I were a student coming out at this scary, unknown, challenging time, I would really take a look at how you can make this work for yourself, and maybe take the chance to step back from your finals and your studies and putting together your portfolio, take another look at your portfolio, and maybe use it as a chance to really think about what your story is in your career path and what you really want out of this. I talked to some students at UTA earlier this year about portfolios, and they were all so nervous and wondering how do they do a portfolio perfectly. And I really had to say, the portfolio matters, but you're also getting a job when this does, firms may not be hiring right this moment, but when they do, firms are looking for people who really know who they are. At least that's what I always look for, and someone who wants to invest long term. So the more that you can take that time to understand what your story is, what you want out of your employer, do you really want to move to that city and why? I think all those things are good questions to ask yourself. And remember that you're also interviewing where you will be placed on a team with other people. So don't get too nervous about just getting a job. Any job matters. I think that it's too easy to fall under that umbrella during a time like this and uncertainty is getting a job, but try to take the time to take a breath and think, why do I want this job? Who do I want to work for and why? So when I graduated, I think I was lucky. It was actually 2010. And so it was after the first round of layoffs had really occurred in offices, and a lot of, I think, mid-level staff had been laid off in the industry at that time. So I think one good thing for people coming out of school is remembering that it's very desirable, if that happens, that entry-level people, that people start bringing back entry-level people into their offices. So don't get too discouraged there. I also had an intern in China, which I used to get a job before graduation. I think I was the only person in my class to get a job before graduation from LSU, which was even a #1 school at the time, right? So it was scary. And a lot of people in my class ended up going back to college and getting their master's. So if you're coming out with an undergrad, maybe use this time to consider a master's degree. But for me, I was able to use my experience in my internship in China to explain not just the work I did, but kind of being more resilient and how I was flexible to get that job, which landed me at SWA and became the foundation of my career and took me also to China. So I think sometimes beyond just the work in your portfolio, and see what have you done in your past that could make you more desirable to different types of sectors or multidisciplinary firms. And just as Megan said, for sure, I would definitely encourage people to think about jumping out of their comfort zone, going and working at a nursery, or calling some contractors or design build firms, or if you don't necessarily need financially the job, which is great, maybe contacting, just asking, hey, I know you're not hiring, but can I shadow you? And just really trying to go out of your comfort zone and take initiative, be confident, and kind of be really flexible. I think that was 3 minutes, sorry.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Heath?
All right, so I'm going to take on question number 1. It says, as firms have been reacting to recent events, how will their approach to hiring change? Obviously cannot speak for every firm here, but I'll be honest, I don't know that hiring practices are going to change that much. You know, for the past 10 years, our process involves a virtual interview to begin with. I mean, as most of the firms on this call are, our talent is not based in Texas. Our talent is based nationally. And so, and in some cases internationally. So the first touch is always a Zoom meeting, a Skype, a GoToMeeting session. By this point, we've looked at your portfolio, your resume. There's some inherent quality in there that we like about you. And then that interview comes a lot to personality. Are you a jerk? Or do you actually somebody that we could see ourselves hanging out with, right? So that process isn't going to change. I think the thing that will change primarily for us is that second touch point is usually flying that recent graduate or that intern into the respective office so that we can meet you. And then more importantly, you can meet the team, you can immerse yourself in the space. You know, is it the kind of design place you want to work? We may have to shy away from that for a little while. And I don't know what that means yet, but you know, usually offers are made after that first, you know, face-to-face interaction, and we may withhold some of those, or I say this, we may start making offers without having physically met the person yet, right? So, and again, I don't know if that's a long-term or a short-term, but the process remains the same, right? Get a great portfolio, have a great resume. Someone mentioned it, only apply for the firms that you want to work for. And if you can't go to their website and find a project that you like, don't apply for that firm. You're wasting your time and you're wasting ours, right? And then the other question I'm going to tackle real quick is number 6. With the decrease in internship opportunities for students, what would you suggest students do over the summer? And so, you know, put a little thought into this. And yeah, we had an intern from Kansas State that was supposed to join us, and we killed the internship program this summer because, to be quite honest, we were, you know, making sure that we could keep all employees billable at this time. So I think if you haven't written down everyone's name who's on this call, you should do that before this call is over. And more importantly, reach out to us. Give us a call. We've been, you know, we have walked a mile in your shoes. We've been there before. Call us. If you can get our emails from our websites, do that, and request a phone conversation. If you and your classmates want to have a one-on-one deep dive conversation, I'm sure every person on this call would be happy to have a conversation if we have the time, right? Time is always the constraint, right? Design competitions in the 2008 recession, man, we did some freaking crazy competitions around the world. Designed some crazy streetscape in Iceland. Who knows if it got built, but you know what? We were drawing stuff and it was a lot of fun. So I encourage you to do that. I think the other thing you can do is be creative in who you're talking to. You know, every person, every professional on this call gets requests from churches, nonprofits. What can you do for me? What can you sketch? Can you come up with a concept? So, you know, start asking around your community. What can you do as not only as a professional or a young professional, what can you do as a person who cares about the community you live in to make a difference during this time? Take advantage of this time that you have off. And then, of course, there's ALA or ASLA, AIA, ULI, all the acronyms that are out there. You know, find those organizations, grab their webinars, do what you can to stay involved, put a pulse on what's happening in the market that you're in and where you want to be. So you can do a lot. I mean, there's actually a lot you can be doing right now. I encourage all of you, as someone said, this too shall pass. We've all been in these trenches before, and we'll come out of it on the other side. That's my 2 questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Heath. Kurt?
Sure. I'd like to address questions 3 and 6. Some of what I have to say is essentially a follow-up to what Megan and some of what Lauren said, and even some of what he said, but hopefully it'll be helpful. I think for people out there who are going to be interviewing and looking for jobs in the near future, they should make the most of any practical job experience they have. If they have worked on projects in the past that were actually constructed, if they have any kind of on-site, like construction site experience, I think that's valuable, and I think they need to make a big deal of that in their resumes. Also, for students out there, if they've in the past had just about any kind of job where they've dealt with a budget, if they understand how budgets work, how to keep projects within budget, if they've had any kind of experience with cash flow, I think they also need to promote that and let employers know that. Something that I think Megan said earlier, and I think this is important, they also need to make a big deal out of their understanding of the latest types of design software and also communication software, because in the last couple of months, companies all over the world have been scrambling to try to figure out how to do business remotely. And so I think if students can show that they have an understanding, if they say, hey, I can come and help you set that sort of thing up, I think that's also very, very important. To number 6, I think this is also mentioned, and this is what I had been planning to say. I think students should look at nurseries and large design build firms, because what's happened in the past in some of these recessionary times, a lot of people that might have been planning on taking their once in a lifetime vacation this summer, like going to Antarctica or Europe or something like that, they're saying, well, travel is kind of risky right now. What we'll probably do is let's put in that new pool and that cabana and that outdoor kitchen we've always been talking about. So I think that we'll probably see a lot of work in the residential side. So hopefully there's some jobs out there for students. And once again, I think either Megan or Lauren said this, there's lots of businesses that need people with design skills, not just landscape architecture. So if the jobs with landscape architecture firms are kind of weak and soft right now, maybe they should look at companies that design signs or people that do interior decorating. Any kind of thing where design skills are required, they've got the experience of working with different types of computer-aided design. I think that would help as well.
Perfect. We'll get back in order. Sarah, if you want to go ahead for Houston.
Sure. I'm going to begin with tackling number 1, how our approach to hiring has changed given the recent events. At Design Workshop, particularly in Houston, we've definitely seen a slowdown in hiring. Design Workshop did not pursue our summer internship program, which is a very large internship program that brings about a dozen interns in from across the country. We just simply felt that we couldn't give the best learning experience over the course of the summer, given that many of our offices are still working from home. I think firms will need to become more strategic and intentional with hiring. I'm going to consistently use the word cautious during this whole panel, but Design Workshop is exhausting all internal resources really before seeking any new hires. My next question, number 4, for those working at firms, could you share what you've heard from clients? Are you seeing projects being put on hold? Are you seeing a decrease in the availability of new projects? Like I said before, Houston is actually faring well, just staying cautious, as we know the oil and gas industry directly affects our work in this region, certainly hurts construction labor and materials. Houston has not experienced a significant slowdown of project work, but that's not to say it's going to slow down within the next 6 to 12 months. Some of the work that we have seen slow down directly relates to tourism. So some of the public spaces that generate revenue daily. Clients are definitely being more cautious with their spending and their budgets. So being part of those sorts of critical conversations with them. New project opportunities are still steadily flowing both from private and public sectors. It kind of just depends on housing, oil and gas, office, et cetera.
Perfect. Thank you. Bill, Houston?
Okay, Jonathan, I'm going to speak to questions 2, and then I'm going to actually do question 6 also. In regards to question 2, in regards to the skills that are more important right now, I can't stress enough how important it is for communication. You've got to be a good communicator. That's always been important, but in a situation now where, honestly, I don't think any of us can predict what the next 6 months to a year really looks like. We can all guess, but if we're going to be in a situation where we're going to have to be doing just this, communicating from afar, communicating Zoom calls, Teams calls, whatever it may be, we've got to make sure that you're a good communicator. So if you can't communicate very well, or you're shy in your communication, you're going to have a hard time one, getting attention from an interview, but more importantly, have a hard time working with a team. That also speaks to communication in graphics, and not just graphics of hand graphics, but understanding how to use Bluebeam, how to use all the different products out there that we use right now daily to communicate in this digital world. So that's, I think, very important for, if you don't feel comfortable with that, work on that, because that's going to be important. And in reality, we're looking for those skills currently for all of our employees. On number 6, in regards to the decrease in internship opportunities, what do we recommend? Well, I will tell you that TBG, what we've done is we've actually honored all of our internships. We have 8 interns starting in a week. We're going to do a virtual internship program, which we've never done before, but we're doing it because we think it's a great opportunity to give back to the students. We believe as a firm, honestly, that and I encourage actually everybody on this call, we owe it to these students to do what we can to not let this year pass by. And so we're going to have a virtual internship over the next 9 weeks. We're going to teach everybody from hands-on in regards to digital graphics to teaching them with lectures, bringing in speakers, but we're going to give back to the profession, and we're going to hopefully have students that will maintain in the profession because of this. So one, I would say reach out to firms and see if there's other firms willing to do something similar. The other side of it is if you don't have an opportunity to have an internship this summer, go out and get your hands dirty. Take the opportunity to learn construction, whether it be planting or whether it be physically building something vertical. Learn the construction side of it, be exposed to that. It'll always make you a better landscape architect as you go through your career.
Absolutely. Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, I'm gonna probably key into some of what Bill just mentioned there at the end of his 3 minutes there. So I'm gonna speak to question 3 and question 4. So my advice to landscape architecture graduates to stand out in a crowd, continue to be versatile. We're all training to do that right now through this very awkward time. Have a mix of experiences, projects, volunteer opportunities highlighted in both your resume and portfolio. It's always benefited me where I never pass down an opportunity if it was thrown my way. You just don't know where it's going to land you or what connections you're going to make of it. A portfolio or resume that has kind of one avenue of selective work or experience really puts a damper on a candidate's potential at a firm. As firms look and attempt to navigate these uncharted waters right now of this global pandemic, we're oftentimes looking to broaden our area of expertise and shift our focus to other project types that might not be within our typical wheelhouse. So being able to shift course at a moment's notice can help a firm and an individual tackle these uncharted waters. I'll be honest with you. My day-to-day, I'm typically in CAD, but the past couple of weeks I've been working on marketing. So, if you can just be able to switch pretty quickly and dive in and get your hands dirty on other things in the office and help your other teammates out, it's definitely going to benefit you. And I can speak to my personal experience as well. Before working at a traditional landscape architecture firm, I worked at 2 sustainable systems firms. The first firm I worked at is working on living walls in Baltimore, Maryland, kind of a niche field that allowed me to gain a quick understanding of construction documentation and construction observation, quite literally out in the field on construction sites, putting the walls, actually hanging them in the plants on the wall. And then the second was a firm down here in Austin doing rainwater collection, which allowed me to gain a quick understanding of plant material, irrigation, construction techniques down here. And then also allowed me to make connections with other individuals and other landscape architects. So, just broaden your horizon a little bit outside of typical landscape architecture, because you don't know where it's going to take you. And then for number 4, for those of you working at firms, could you share what you've been hearing from your clients? We've definitely had a mixed bag from clients, but certainly all revolving around the same semblance of fear. We had, again, clients put projects on hold that we never thought would go on hold. And we had projects move forward, if not with even more pressure on our team and anticipation of the projects coming into fruition. But for all of our projects that have been put on hold, I can also say almost all of them have been brought back with a vengeance, which is, again, very exciting for our team. And with a vast majority of them moving forward, given the circumstances. And then from another perspective, my former colleague, who was out in Baltimore, is actually down here in Austin and is currently working at a residential design firm. We talk daily, and she's been inundated with new calls, proposals just in the past 2 weeks. They were definitely worried about their backlog and how to keep all of their crews busy. They are currently sitting at a 6 to 8 week backlog for new clients here in the Austin area with new proposals coming in. So with this, if you have your heart set on a commercial landscape architecture firm, there may be an opportunity to look at residential design. So again, just really broaden your horizon and get out of your comfort zone.
Perfect. Thank you, Megan. Eileen?
Yes, I am going to combine 1 and 3. I know there's some of the most popular questions that we've heard today. I am going to reach all the way back to Heath and agree. I don't think the way we are hiring is really going to change. However, I think students that have just graduated should definitely maybe add a little bit more patience. You know, development firms are kind of in an uncertain gray area right now. As someone else mentioned earlier, you know, we really won't see what's really going to the impact probably for a couple more months. So have patience with us. As far as, you know, the municipal side, we have all kinds of constraints anyway. So just keep looking. If that's your passion, municipal work, which, you know, I'm lucky, it is my passion. I enjoy it. I get to see all the community's shining faces and some of their not so shining comments, but just keep looking for that job opening. You know, a lot of people think that, you know, the city folks stay in one place forever. That's not actually true. People move around a lot. So positions do open up, and I would just be diligent and keep looking. As far as making yourself stand out while you are looking, I agree with almost everybody here. You need to have a level of confidence in yourself to be able to share what your skills are, know those skills. If you are skilled at, you know, hand graphics, there are firms, large and small, they have a guy or a woman that all they do are the graphics for the design firm. So, you know, be confident, be outspoken in what your skills actually are. And I think that covers that section. I will talk about question 6. I graduated in 2002, and I did not have to try and find a job in 2008. However, on the municipal side, I will say 2008 posed an interesting example for us. We had a recent bond in the city that I worked at. We were coming to the end of all those bond funds. We were kind of strapped financially as trying to, you know, in as far as trying to get new projects on the ground. We went into basically a huge master planning phase. And it worked out so well because it was such a long downturn that we had these excellent detailed master plans that we did in-house. We also had consultants assisting with us. And they were so detailed and well thought out, and you know, we had garnered support throughout the whole process that we ended up getting a huge bond package after that whole downturn. And that has served that city very well in these recent years. So I would say, you know, look at where you are applying. If those firms are only focusing on one niche, they only do residential design, or they only do, you know, multifamily residential, stuff like that, you might want to look at a design firm that is a little more diversified. You need a firm that can weather economic downturn, and you only find that out by looking what their project list is. And if it's one thing only, A, is that niche really what you want to do? And B, you know, ask them what their plan is for an economic downturn. That's a totally, you know, that's a great question to ask in an interview. I would definitely do that. Let's see. I think that's it. Yeah, I know where you're going. Don't just accept any offer. I think someone said that earlier. You know, you want to be in a confident spot that you want to be in a city you want to be at. You want to be at a firm that's going to be around for a while. On the municipal side, during the downturn, we had local firms that we already had contracts with, and they weren't huge firms, but they were able to help us exponentially with translating our needs and our, we were the client, our wants, and they really helped us get the funding that we should have, and it just propels our community even more forward, and would bring more people in, have a larger economic impact. It all waterfalls on each other. So know who you're looking at as far as applying for jobs. I think I'm done.
Perfect. Thank you, Ellie. And Tanya in South?
Sure. I'm going to tackle number 3 and question number 6. The advice that we have for graduating landscape architects, we have always hired via online interviews, so that approach has never changed. But the advice that we have is be strong communicators. That is a very essential component of when you have an interview. And then the portfolios are nice, but also know how to explain the process of how the design was developed, and also know how to navigate through the portfolio online, have somebody to practice with, and then reaching out to any companies. All of us that are online right now currently, we're more than willing to help all of you, and then engage your cohorts to work together, and then give any updates on work or potential hiring opportunities. And then we are also looking for people that are always proactive, strong communicators, and flexible to doing whatever is required. We are also looking for people that are excited and are willing to soak up all the learning knowledge. So that's communication is a very strong one currently now with the COVID situation happening. If there's no communication, then nothing will happen. And so for number 6, with the decrease in internship opportunities, one thing is, even if there's no paid internships, you can ask firms, hey, I'm willing to not get a paid internship. There's companies that offer unpaid internships, and those really help with the experience that you gain. Hone on all of your 3D modeling skills, CAD skills, all the Adobe Suite programs. Those can sharpen up your skills, and you're more likely to get hired, because that's one thing that makes you an attractive potential employee. And then if there's no internships, always be open to working on nurseries or design build or residential. I know all those have been picking up because people are now at home, and those companies are looking for that job. And so the more experience you have, the better exposure and knowledge you have under your belt, and you're more likely to get hired by firms.
Perfect. Thank you, Tanya. And thank you, everybody, for that fantastic feedback. I was just jotting notes like crazy. I will say that, if I was a graduate coming out of school and I had this opportunity to see just the breadth of knowledge on this call, this is such an incredible, format for providing all this information to students. I just want to sum up, the answers on my side as well, and just fill in a few key items that I had jotted down in some responses. On ones that were not necessarily answered quite as much. I know number 3 and number 6 were handled pretty heavily. But as far as number 1, I think, the tough thing that we're seeing across all firms across the state of Texas is everyone's different. But what we're going to see now, just like we were seeing in 2008 and other recessions, the firms that are being proactive and being prudent in their decisions, everyone's being prudent right now without knowing what's coming up in this thing. But the firms that are being proactive are the ones that are going to be out in front of this wave. The ones that are just kind of sitting there twiddling their thumbs are not going to be in a position to react quick enough and find the talent that's available. So I think that's a really important place for most firms to align themselves. I think what's interesting is that the firms that have cash, positive cash positions that are not living invoice to invoice, those are the ones that are still able to hire right now, from small firms up to large firms. And the one thing that across the entire membership right now, from firm owners that we just polled, AR is really the trickiest thing right now. So if you don't have those funds coming back, those funds are sitting in someone else's bank account, you don't have those funds available to hire out right now. And so I think that that's really a tricky part. A lot of people are participating in the PPP loan, all these COVID, funds from federal as well as, state levels. A lot of folks are taking advantage of those. So that may be able to, include some proactive nature to these firms. I will mention I did graduate in 2008, right as a recession from A&M. And, what I would say to graduates that are coming out of this time is just stay persistent. It's a tricky time to come out, but you have to understand that you have to have patience, and you may not find something right away, but like many others said, this is the time that you can broaden your horizons, think outside the box, get outside your comfort zone and try something new that could still have a skill set that's applicable in the future. I will say it's not just trolling Indeed. Also, you need to look at other sources. Go have informal interviews. The human element, I think what we found right now, the human element is so important. Have a face-to-face, even through Zoom. Do informal interviews, like Heath said. Show us that you're a person. We don't want to just see a portfolio. Sure, those skills are important, but communication, making sure that you're a good fit, especially in small firms like our own in Round Rock, culture is the most important thing. We can teach skills, we can't teach culture. We need to know that you can fit in our organization, and communication, as it's mentioned several times before, is so important in that. I will answer number 8, actually, that no one has responded to this one. And it was about, have we seen any COVID-related funds or initiatives that might create opportunities in landscape architecture? This is a question that I actually want to pose to National ASLA. I do not personally know of any, and it's going to be interesting if we get a response, and I'll happily follow up with anything I find. What's interesting, I think, is whether or not there are some funds that are related to the healthcare sector specifically. And I'd love to see if some of those funds could be earmarked for outdoor spaces within healthcare environments. What we're finding right now is, a lot of folks that are dealing with sick family members aren't able to be in the rooms with these folks. Where do they go when they're at the hospital? It's not just hospital patients, but it's also these folks that are waiting. And I'd love to see some of these funds available for hospitals and healthcare providers to provide these outdoor spaces. So I think that could be a potential interesting opportunity for funds related to landscape architecture. So, that all being said, I think that kind of summed up that first portion. I am really interested. I know it's 12 o'clock on the dot, so I think we're in pretty good time, Hope. I'd love to, address number 7 as kind of a closing to all the individual, discussions for each of you. If you have an answer, you may not. I don't want to put you on the spot. I know we have some questions that are coming in as well from the YouTube Live, but we can go in the same order. But how do you see, your personal take? How do you see landscape architecture as a practice in this, incredibly, challenging and changing time that we have? What do you see as changing in light of the recent events? So, Megan, you can start off again.
Sure. Obviously, like I said earlier, I think we're going to be working remotely more. Strangely enough, our utilization, okay, so we have about 200 employees statewide, and everybody's been working from home for 6 weeks, and I think they're going to extend it out through at least July 1st. And our utilization is up, which you'd think with kids and dogs and all the other things that are at your house that could distract, our utilization is up. So I feel like actually we're discussing doing partially where you can work maybe from the office and from home both. So I feel like that, for one, that's probably the biggest thing that's come out of this COVID stuff. So that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I certainly hope that this affects landscape architecture and how we practice. I think personally, I have watched a city like Dallas morph from a city that tends to be a little bit, although very dense, more isolated and suburbanized, than Austin. And we don't see a lot of people flocking to all the parks in town, all the trails that are available. And suddenly I've documented and taken a lot of pictures of people with park blankets on lawns that have never seen one person use before. And I've seen people on trails. And I think this is an opportunity for us to really use this time as an example in the future. For example, we're working on several higher education projects, and I had to battle it out with the school last year, and they were like, no one goes outside in Texas. Come on, because we're designing outdoor classrooms. And it's like, oh, we would show examples. And I think, if you make a great space that can be used as a classroom, now more than ever, people will use that. And we're also working on a project that has an outside co-working space. And I'm very excited about that. So I think this is a time to think about the built spaces and how meaningful they are, and using this as an example to promote our profession more than anything.
So kind of starting at the professional level, I think you're going to see a big shift in the conversation of designing spaces that promote wellness. Wellness is mental wellness, physical well-being, all those things. And it's the things that our clients in the past have, open spaces, the parts of the land that I can't develop, right? And now we start seeing that there's actual real value to what we do, right? That there's a wellness aspect to that. And even architects, I mean, the idea of creating, if I look at everybody's picture on this webcam, you're all sitting in front of a window, right? We gravitate to natural light. And so this idea of creating places that allow us to really engage with kind of our natural environment. No one wants to work in a basement and not know if it's raining or if the sun's up or if a bird's calling or whatever the case is. So I think you're going to see a dynamic shift. We've seen it on 2 master plan communities in the past 4 weeks. The client called and said, let's redesign. We really liked what you had before, but now in light, we really want to, overly program these spaces so that people have something to do more than just a movie on the lawn night. What does that space become? I think one thing that's really exciting for us is this idea that Megan, you touched on it, that if any firm out there is going to dig their head or dig a hole and put their head back in the sand and kid themselves that people can't work remotely. To your point, Megan, last month was our highest utilization billing month ever in a 42-year history of a firm. And it's all because we're chained to our desks sitting in our guest bedrooms, right? What else do you have to do other than work? It's 9 o'clock. I'll go do some emails, So all of a sudden we figured it out, and we talked about it for 2-3 years that, it'd be great. Maybe on a Friday you can go work from home. You're going to see that a lot. And so the exciting thing for us isn't that, right? That's what everybody should be doing. I think the excitement for us is this idea that maybe even studio can become a bit of a virtual studio. And now your hiring pool and your hiring talent isn't constrained to how fast can you move to Texas. We just hired a gentleman who's in Southern California, and the conversation is, does he need to move, right? For the past 6 weeks, we've been collaborating and sharing and using Sketchbook and using Jamboards and, truly charretting digitally. And so it's this idea of, if I found top talent in Seattle, why do they need to uproot their family and move here? Why can't you be an expert in design there? And better yet, hey, win us some work while you're in Seattle. Let's grow this thing together, right? So I think that's the other fun part. And then one other thing, I really want to encourage the students listening that so far, this is not 2008. Right? 2008 was a bloody period in all of our history, right? Those were dark days. That was 4 years of dark periods of time. And lots of layoffs, lots of, furlough wasn't even a word. It was just, you're laid off. I mean, our DC office went from 40 people down to 1. That's not this time. And so the encouragement out of this should be, keep your head up, keep doing what you're doing, take all the advice you're hearing today. No doubt by Q4 of this year, we'll be back to hiring, we'll be back to robust firms, we'll be back to doing what we do. And better yet, as Lauren and Megan have touched on, and I'm sure others will, landscape architects more than ever are going to be looked to saying, okay, how can we make these spaces better? How can we improve the quality of life for the residents and the workers and the students and all the things that we do? So yeah, don't listen to, if anybody's telling you this is 2008, and I'm not saying this call, but if your dad's telling you this is 2008, he's lying to you. That's all I got to say.
I think things are going to slow down for a while, especially new projects. I do think that the financial situation, at least on the municipal side, is going to get pretty austere for a short while, but in the long run, I don't think it's going to be that bad. And I agree with several things that have already been said. In the last 2 months, I have seen more people using our parks and trail systems than ever before. And landscape architects obviously had a lot to do with the building and design of those parks and those trail systems. So as a career park planner, it makes me feel good. And I do think that in the long run, as has already been mentioned, that this is really going to be a good thing, because we are going to be looked to how can we design these spaces and make them safe for people. I think moving forward, it's a really good thing for us.
Like I said, I mentioned earlier, our clients are becoming more cautious with spending in their budget. So I think it's a great opportunity for us as designers to become more involved with some of those difficult and critical conversations. Being strategic and reminding the client of what the overall design vision is and how as a team can we maintain that vision with new budgets. So as designers, being a little bit more flexible with what our tasks and responsibilities typically are. I think we've all seen, like mentioned before, an extreme increase in usership of our public park spaces. We will continue to see that. There's even talk of businesses such as retail and restaurants taking over streets and sidewalks to, explore how they can use the outdoor space. That type of work is not going to slow down. So it's important not only for firms, but the prospective professionals to stay up to date, stay flexible, and stay adaptive.
I think I think this is just an awesome time. Okay.
Oops, sorry, Megan and Bill, go ahead.
Jumped in front of you, Bill. Go for it.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, I was just going to say, I think this is just an awesome time for landscape architecture. I mean, think about it. The general public has never before understood the value of being outdoors than they are right now. I mean, I don't know anybody that's not trying to take advantage of getting outdoors over the last 9 to 10 weeks. So that alone is an opportunity for us to leverage that as landscape architects and for the profession. So I think if we're not trying to, all of us here on this call to leverage that, and all the students coming out to celebrate that, then I think we're missing an opportunity. We're already seeing clients. We've been working with clients already who are leveraging this already on their plans, scrapping ideas, changing indoor space for outdoor square footage to, social distance, but to a comment earlier about just wellness of space and understanding the opportunity for outdoor space to do that. So I think that's something that we're going to continue to see. I think we're already seeing it, which is great. I think the practice itself as a firm, we've already over the last year have been focusing a lot on work-life balance and how we do that better. We already have plans that we've started putting in place about how do we allow more mobility before this even happened, about how do we get laptops to everybody so that everybody has that opportunity to be mobile. I think this just shines more of a light on that. We've been talking about how our offices maybe could begin to look like collaboration hubs versus a place you go sit down for 8 hours and crank out CAD drawings, but instead more of a collaboration environment. And allowing flexibility for folks to, be almost a hybrid. I think the one thing that I have heard, and we work with folks all over, and we've got a large firm. Although everybody has been very efficient, we've seen the same kind of things that's been mentioned on the call here. There has also been a miss of that collaboration of being with people. I mean, this is great on video, but there's an interaction piece of it. Doesn't mean it has to happen 5 days a week. It doesn't have to happen 40 hours. But I think the human being doesn't want to do this for the rest of their career. And we've had a lot of individuals that have worked remotely that will tell you firsthand, they'd rather sit at a Starbucks and work remotely than they would if they're home 5 days a week because they need interaction with people. So I think to think that we're not going to do that in some fashion would also be probably not true. So anyway, that's just our observations as a firm.
Bill, you read my mind. I was trying to jump in front of you there. I've been sitting at this desk, just strapped to this window, looking out at this massive live oak tree. And there's some days I'll even open the window up, even though it's 100 degrees out, because I want to be outside and just watching all of the people that are going down to the Town Lake Trail. I've never seen that trail as packed as I've seen it now. It's amazing. So kind of what he said as well, everyone's going a little stir crazy, wants to get outside, and it's going to be leverage to our profession and how important these public spaces are. I know Lauren touched on it. It was also interesting too. I think we had a vendor, Landscape Forums, and I know some other vendors as well. They're even looking at how do we, make these products and distance people, and how does this COVID era and, how does that affect how we design products? So it's very interesting to hear that last week where they were already trying to think about this. And I know other vendors are thinking about it as well. But I am excited to get back outside and also back into the office. But why can't you grow an office and have, like you're saying, just docking stations? So, half the week you're out on a construction site. Why do I need to pay for that real estate regardless, when I can just plug in, just be there for my team meeting 2 or 3 days out of the week? And if I have meetings and other things that take me all over Texas, why are we paying an exorbitant amount of money for these desks when I don't even get to use them because I'm boots on the ground out in the field? So I think there's another way to think about that. And again, these collaboration hubs, I don't think an office will ever go away, but maybe we can efficiently and more effectively look at that and how we can share that space and be more collaborative in that process.
Thank you. Eileen?
Yes, I'm probably just going to reiterate what everyone said. It's what happens there at the bottom of the list. We, as a municipal worker, we are seeing unprecedented people out on our trails, in our parks, and the outcry when we actually had to shut down our playgrounds and sport courts was immediate, and it was loud. You can never have too many parks. I think every city out there has thousands of acres of open space and parkland, but then when you get down to looking at their inventory of actual developed parks, they have room to grow. And we and most cities that are able to like to partner with our private development and work together to get those areas either developed or have that development be an adjacent amenity to an existing amenity that the city already has. As far as, anything changing, maybe those tiny postage stamp size, neighborhood parks in the developers, the single family housing, instead of just a tiny playground and maybe a bench, maybe we kind of push our clients to really trying to connect into existing park infrastructure or even helping us build that park infrastructure. So that's really what I would be looking into at this time. Thank you.
And then finally for me, with all this social distancing going on, the spaces that we are designing now, the clients are more aware, and we accommodate and program more of the outdoor spaces. And so we are taking advantage of it, and clients are realizing that landscape architects have a vital role in the design of projects, because we work with many architects and engineers in our firm. Even themselves are realizing that, hey, landscape architects make a difference. So that, in spite of the COVID and whatever's happening, this is a really great opportunity for all of us, even as recent graduates, to apply this career, because it does affect us all, our wellness, our well-being, our health. And so I think that, this makes us much more valuable. And clients, people, users, they are all realizing that landscape architects do make a difference.
Jonathan, as we transition, I was wondering, we have one online question, which I'd like to merge with another, if that's okay with you. Okay.
Yeah, sure
right.
thing. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And so this deals, from our survey, someone asked whether or not they would recommend, or you would recommend the panel, pursuing lead associate accreditations. And so I'm going to open it up to all additional accreditations or credentialing, thinking not just lead, but what is it significant for a firm when you're reviewing resumes to look at Autodesk certification or certification for any of the software packages that you as an office do employ. Now, the problem is for students, right? There's a financial cost to them, all right, on top of student loans after they're graduating. So I always say that with a caveat, but is that something that you all look at when the resumes arrive at your office? And would you recommend them pursue credentials?
Yeah, I'll speak to, our firm, and one thing I was going to mention just in terms of, closing the window on number 7, there are educational opportunities everywhere these days. There is no reason for any individual to not be building their professional developments that are free at very low cost. And I think that this opportunity with the COVID-19 pandemic has opened those horizons even further than they already have been. So if you're not finding educational opportunities out there, you're not looking, because they're literally everywhere. In terms of actual specific certifications, that's not really important to our firm specifically. We, like I said, mentioned earlier, we can teach the skills that are necessary. I think it's important to show that you have the, go-gettedness, to accomplish a certificate, but it's not a necessity in our specific, spot. So anyone else want to speak to that?
I'll chime in real quick on that, Hope. I agree, Jonathan, certification certificates like that don't necessarily have a lot of weight in regards to who we hire and don't hire. I will tell you that we would probably, in fact, we do look at somebody's experience, whether it be in design build or whether it be just another internship, their experience having been exposed to the profession at some level during their education as more of a standout than somebody that's just gotten certification. Because unfortunately, certification just tells you that you have a good understanding of a program, for instance, if you're Autodesk, but you don't necessarily, it doesn't tell you if they actually know how to use it in relationship to what we do day in, day out.
And I can jump in there too. I mean, with an Autodesk
Also, Bill,
certification, I think Lauren's jumping in. Go for it.
Lauren.
Okay, I got muted.
Go for it.
Okay, I agree with you, Bill. I guess just to loop back to maybe if someone does have an interest with lead, I would strongly suggest, in my experience, taking a look at sites instead, because I do believe that sites provides a very good comprehensive approach to design in the first place, and whether or not the firm is necessarily wanting you to be receiving that certification or not, I think it provides a very good background to design and could always help you in your approach. I think it leads you towards a lot of good research. And I would also, I know personally, if you were going to look at a program, we would be interested in someone, like Bill said, certifications don't really teach you how to use the program and apply it, which is very true. So I don't think a general Autodesk class would really be helpful, but I don't think it would hurt in this time in 2020 to try to use Revit and maybe get certified in that or take a look at just how to use the programs. I think that'll also set you apart from a lot of people, and more firms are actually trying to go in that direction. So I don't think that would hurt.
Megan.
I may throw a curveball real quick. Oh, sorry.
Go for it, Bill.
Well, I was just going to throw a curveball in there real quick, Hope, is that I'll be honest with you, I would be probably more intrigued by somebody that came to me with art passion, or somebody came with me with photography, something that had a design creative passion that they had on the side. They showed me that over certification. That tells me a whole bunch about how they think, and you see, they understand context and everything else. So just to throw a curveball in there, if you have free time, especially if you don't have an internship right now, or you're in the situation we're in, leverage those opportunities to take an art class, leverage those opportunities to take a photography class. That's something that I will tell you that stands out for us. Just a little different perspective.
And then I guess I'll jump in now to piggyback on Bill too, you know, TVG standards, their CAD standards, it's still going to take a new person, even with that certification or not, it's going to take them the same amount of time. If not, you might shave off a day, you might shave off a week, but with every firm, you know, you're still getting that onboarding. So that certification might help you in the long run, maybe when you get into some intricacies on how to do something, but regardless, TVG standards are different than another firm's standards, and you still have to get on board to that. So I, again, don't know that really, you know, having all the letters at the end of your name and, you know, the whole slew of the alphabet, don't know that really outweighs someone else, again, without that applicable experience that really puts them ahead potentially of someone else. So.
All right, I mean, that's fair, but right, you know, Autodesk has multiple levels from basic intro to all the way up, right, through Revit, through any BIM standard. For anyone who's getting into programming or Python or automating processes, like for firms who are probably taking advantage of that, there is, I would argue that there is something to be said where that would actually prove, right, or be able to, a student would be able to rely on that, or if they're really interested in the visualization aspect of things. But okay, that's fair. You know, but, and as one thing is, right, as educators, we are like ultimately concerned with, you know, expenses, or, you know, while they are in school and out of school, right? And so you've all mentioned the Adobe suite. Well, Adobe's now socking it to the students. So there's something that I would argue that there are things that you're going to have to pay attention to in terms of students having familiarity with other image processing or vector processing graphics, but not necessarily taking advantage of the Adobe. So I think there's something that professionals are going to have to be aware of that's coming down the pike, especially in terms of, you know, penalizing students, right, and institutions. But there is something.
Hey, Hope,
yeah?
along those lines, we're getting rid of the entire Adobe package in July. We're just transitioning away from Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator. There's better things out there now, guys. I mean, and a fraction of the cost. Yeah.
And that's what the institution is pursuing. But Heath, I wanted you to talk about this, please. I wrote this in the comments. One thing that I'm concerned about, right? We get those emails all the time asking for free consulting services. And I always say that, you know, students, I do believe that we need to be innovative in this time period. But there's the last thing I would want to do is to encourage uncredentialed or licensed practitioner to take the place of a licensed landscape architect. And when I respond to emails coming from the public, I think it's great that an institution's interested in that, but please help me design a playground or an outdoor area of worship or something to that effect. But then again, they're coming to me because they want my students because they're cheaper, and they're not really taking on the licensed practitioner. And I always hesitate before putting a recent graduate in the position of liability or someone not valuing the discipline. And so I take, you know, a very different position.
Right. Yeah,
but
we
maybe that's
as I
what
put in the
academic
chat,
debate's all about.
No, I mean, in the recession,
I agree. We see
2008
that a
through
lot.
probably 2010, we offered, sorry, but we offered unpaid internships in the recession, and to be quite honest, we felt like it was devaluing the profession. You know, it was undermining the value that we as designers contribute. We didn't feel like that the students that worked for us for 2-3 months were being, you know, treated fairly at the end of it. So we just stopped. I mean, we don't think that from a business ethics standpoint and how we treat our other design professionals, that an unpaid internship is not the right tone that it really sets. Plus, if clients find out that you have unpaid interns, they go, oh, see, you guys are cheap, right? I mean, you're so cheap that they're working for free. It's not the right message that goes out. So I 100% agree with you, Hope, on the liability aspect. That would keep me awake at night, you know, the thought of an undocumented or an unregistered design professional out there drawing something that then, you know, it was for free, but you know what? Somebody got hurt. Everybody gets sued, you know? So I would, for the past 10 years, we have really shied away from any unpaid opportunity. Even if they shadow you for a week, we will compensate you for that, right? There's value in the time that we have together as professionals.
Great. I mean, I wasn't trying to be Debbie Downer or anything, but yeah. All right. So here's the thing.
That's an important question. It is an important question. It has come up.
You know, I mean, I'm sure the people on the receiving end of my responses, you know, feel differently, but I mean, I really do take our whole program we take a really hard line on that. One thing is, as we're beginning to conclude, I did want to say one thing that we didn't discuss, and one thing that wasn't part of this, was alternative ways of practice. All of you encouraged innovation and taking advantage of anything that's out there, the design competitions, online learning, but there are also, and you also mentioned just working with in any design capacity whatsoever. But there have been multiple sort of webinars or publications that talk about designers making alternative practices. And you could even think about the grant industry, working through the NEH or others in terms of producing grants that help to fund a type of research-based practice. And I think that's something that we should encourage students or recent graduates to consider as they're making this transition time. So, but anyway, I think that's another roundtable.
I agree. I think that there's, you know, you look at Landscape Architecture Foundation, you look at the Cultural Landscape Foundation, you know, those are also opportunities out there. So yeah, go to the nonprofit realm within landscape architecture, the research side, you know, read the LAM magazines and see who these people are that are putting this content out there and research them. And there's so many avenues. I think the skill sets that each of these programs in Texas, we are so lucky and blessed to have faculties that have this incredible experience, that these students are coming out with some of the best skill sets. And I speak as one of them coming out of A&M in 2008. The skill sets that you have as a student right now in these 4 programs, accredited universities, are some of the best in the country, bar none. So use that skill set, leverage it for other things out there, and you will find a job, you'll find success.
Okay, well, to the next roundtable. Look, I very much appreciate everyone's time and your input and your willingness to share the experiences in your firms and in your region, especially with the graduates at this time. So hopefully they'll all get a chance to meet. We've been upwards of the high 40s in terms of people streaming from across Texas. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to connect with so many. And it's very nice to meet all of you virtually, if not through Instagram.
Well, thank you, Hope. I hope I speak for all the panelists that we appreciate this opportunity, and stay tuned for more programming to come. We've got a lot of really cool stuff coming down the pike at ASLA, and we look forward to these relationships building. So thank you again all for joining us.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Hey,
Thank
thank
you
you,
all.
everybody, for doing this, and for Hope and Jonathan for pulling this together. Thanks.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Jane.
Thanks, everyone. Talk soon.